So for the discussion part, I read this really good article. My friend Busssard, the article was Bitcoin is unsustainable in the sense of how much electricity of Bitcoin and mining. And we mentioned it on a small scale when you got into mining. Your electricity bill was higher than what you're actually mining, and so we think about it in a bigger scale. I forgot, there was something about like one transaction of like the same amount of an average American household for that one transaction. To what we mentioned in the first half, that as these problems kind of face us, necessity is the mother of all inventions. That there will be correction in this as far as, uh, and I think it's already even before Bitcoin that we need to find solutions to how we get electricity in the first place. But what do you see as far as? But there's also this problem with, say, the China big mining operations, and how perhaps it'll be harder for them to get like regulations on how they produce energy, and there could be a real problem with the energy side of the practical just computing the blockchain.
Yeah, that's some very valid points, and it is very energy intensive, and it's also very resource intensive as far as constant hardware upgrades. There's a lot of materials that are constantly thrown out. Hopefully, these materials are being recycled. So yes, this is can pose as an environmental problem. I think one of the reasons why they made securing the Bitcoin network so resource intensive is to make it expensive, purposely make it expensive to secure the network so that it comes with a very high price tag for someone to try to co-opt or, attack the network type of thing, right? With like a 51% attack or whatnot. So if it was like really, really cheap, now we're at a $9 billion market cap. So if it was very cheap to just attack the network type of thing, by acquiring a lot of cheap hashing power, then it would be more susceptible to attack. So because it comes with a higher price tag, being extremely resource intensive, and obviously we can do this better. I foresee that perhaps if we started using solar panels or solar technology, that we could do this more efficiently. Solar panels are constantly being upgraded. The technology is constantly evolving and becoming more efficient, right? We now have solar panels that have way more power than than the panels we saw even just a few years ago. Someone puts in the upfront costs of creating a solar farm to eliminate the electrical costs, then all they have to do is pay for hardware from for the rest of their mining careers type of thing. And once they just pay for hardware, they just got to keep on upgrading it. But we are hitting a plateau, hit a point of decentralization again with the mining, because once all the big mining farms, once they can't have a competitive edge and being able to upgrade to their technology, their mining equipment, their technology, then that'll incentivize, a lot of them will probably drop off, and that may incentivize regular people to get smaller devices to just mine in the background type of thing. I think 21, they've been working on micro mining and micro transactions so that machines can actually pay each other and interact with each other and that kind of stuff. So there's some interesting things happening, and it could be that mining just ends up something that's running in the background for across multiple millions of devices, home devices, as opposed to big centralized mining farms. So we'll see what happens, but like Bitcoin is kind of becoming a resource in economy, since we're in an information age. A lot of information and digital content is a high commodity right now, and Bitcoin is a way that we can actually be able to rent or sell resources like extra storage space or bandwidth or whatever. So we're seeing a whole new economy kind of growing as a result of this. So it'll be interesting to see what becomes of Bitcoin mining, especially after the halving, because with the rewards being halved, if the price doesn't go up some more, then it'll be more difficult for them to make return on investment. So
that was kind of stop the arms race that's going on of keep on upgrading more and more machines. And but so we have Busssard here who actually posted this article, and I'd like to get his take and what he thinks about this. Busssard, hey, what's up? How's it going?
Hey, yeah, I recently had a discussion with a good friend of mine who's studying informatics, and we talked for a while about how Bitcoin is unsustainable and how it's actually built into the system, because every hash that is solved to create another Bitcoin, in fact, the Bitcoin that you get from mining, I think this whole concept of mining is a little bit it leads you in the wrong direction, because in fact you're not mining, you're actually keeping all the rest of the blockchain secure. It's not like you're mining to get a Bitcoin, you're mining to keep every transaction in the past secure. And as there are more and more transactions, I think it says one transaction actually costs you the amount of energy that 1.5 American households consume in a day. And that's an average American household, so it's a lot of energy for one normal transaction. As there's more transactions coming when Bitcoin becomes more popular, this means that the energy needs are actually going up. And as the hashes are more and more difficult in the future, also the energy needs will go up per transaction. So it's not like the energy need for one transaction is fixed. The whole Bitcoin network will consume so much more energy than it is consuming right now. And this flaw is actually built into the system, because with the mining, you're not creating a value really, except for keeping the past transactions secure and maybe anonymous if you wash them enough or whatever. So at the moment, I mean, when I heard about this, I was really thinking, and I was almost a little bit disappointed. My Bitcoin hype went a little bit down because it's not creating any value. I mean, how is it different from the money system that we had before, where basically you're mining metal that nobody can do anything with? I mean, what can you build with gold except for gold statues for the gods? And
Yeah, that is interesting because so they've kind of built in. So there is a cost-effective portion of this, so it kind of deters, say, someone trying to double up on the Bitcoin because it's just not cost-effective to kind of like game the system. But it also creates this what Busssard was talking about of you're extracting the value, say digitally, with kind of the resources that it actually takes to of the energy. That there's already in the works of saying do the microtransactions with that. Even though it says it's decentralized, there are people that come together to form centralized like conglomerates or groups to say that's why we have these kind of mining wars or these armaments of computing power, right? So they could have an advantage over someone else, so they could solve the cryptography puzzle for this.
I believe, just addressing the value, the value that Bitcoin offers is that for the first time we have an open, immutable public ledger. First time in history, right? And there is a lot of value in that. For example, like Factum is this project where you can turn into hashes, like let's say a land deed, for example, some kind of proof of existence of something, turn into hash and put it on this ledger. And if the ledger continues on for the next 5-10 years or whatnot, as long as it stays intact, then any transaction, because of the proof of work algorithm, right? There's other algorithms that are less resource intensive, such as, you know, proof of stake and things like that. And then there's private bank chains or blockchains. But the problem with private blockchains is that if it's just if all the nodes are just controlled between a few trusted parties, then it's still kind of a trust-based system, and those parties could potentially change the ledger. It doesn't necessarily guarantee that it'll be immutable. And then so the proof of work mechanism is that the blockchain is constantly moving forward. So even if a bunch of people conspire to take over 51% of the network, they could maybe change some of the transactions over the past like few hours, but it would, or at most the day, but it would be impossible based on the way it's happened, you know, yesterday or last week or last year or so on and so forth, right? And so there is some value in that, because, for example, you know, if let's say you have some land in a country like Venezuela or anywhere, and all of a sudden, you know, let's say the government's corrupt and they just decide, you know what, we're just going to burn all these land deeds and we're just going to go in and take everyone's land for whatever, our corporate interests or whatnot, then they actually have that's a record that they could just erase, and they have no way of proving anything, right? Because all our data is basically on faith, stored with municipalities and, you know, counties and so on and so forth, with their record keepers. And so that's a lot of trust in third parties, right? And the same thing goes for the banking system, right? We're trusting these third parties and their fractional reserve credits to honor their debts and honor the value that we allegedly have. But, you know, what were to happen if the bank just decides to, you know, wipe out the units in our bank accounts? Says no, they were.
Same with Bitcoin, though. I mean,
It's not. You cannot erase any transaction on the network.
So I guess let's address the.
I kind of heard. Okay, let me see if I could rephrase what you said. I kind of heard some of that, but it was glitching out. So you're saying that it's essentially the same with Bitcoin, because the miners control the network, and if you centralize the miners, then, you know, they'll be able to have the arbitrary say over what goes into the network, type of thing, if I heard you correctly. I think that's what you said, but it was hard to hear.
If you control more than 50% of calculating power, you control the data.
And here's the difference with Bitcoin, right? Because it's open source and it's based on community consensus. Let's pretend that one miner comes up with an ASIC that completely dominates 99% of the hashing network, and it becomes completely centralized. Well, guess what? Then the developers can just say, you know what? We're just going to change the algorithm from SHA-256. We're going to change it into something else, and we'll see, and we'll get community consensus just to change and upgrade all our nodes. And then those miners who centralize and completely dominate and control it get completely cut out of it entirely, and then they've wasted all that money on trying to take out the network. So it's there are checks and balances with Bitcoins. It's not like miners can just, if miners start attacking the network, then that could be fixed through just changing some code, and by running different nodes, by people who are operating the nodes to just upgrade or hard fork into a different algorithm. So there are checks and balances, and there are a lot of people with their eyes on the network. So it's not as simple as like central banks or banks just being able to arbitrarily change things, or governments being able to arbitrarily change things. Because of its open source decentralized nature, participants do have more say, right? Like anyone can run a node, anyone can choose whether they're a miner or not, anyone can choose to either upgrade their node or not upgrade it based on the developer. So even if the developers were to go awry and decide, oh, we're going to do all this and that, well, then people could choose either not to upgrade their nodes, or miners could choose not to vote and upgrade their nodes as well. And so there's this plan. This is why it's hard for for simple things like a block size increase to happen, and why there's so much debate and all this stuff, because it's hard to get everyone on the same page when there's so many different opinions on it. But there are a couple of concepts with Bitcoin that, as long as these remain the same, that Bitcoin will still be Bitcoin, which is making sure it's hard capped at 21 million, as long as they don't change that, making sure that it's the transactions are immutable, and that it's a ledger that is resistant to censorship and offers some level of privacy. As soon as we start to take away any of those core features, then it's not Bitcoin anymore. As soon as like it's a permissioned ledger, it's like, well, you can participate, but you can't. Well, you're going to need to upload your ID to the blockchain, and therefore anyone who doesn't will be able. Then it's not Bitcoin anymore. And see, some of this have addressed this problem. They're operating on like proof of stake models, which require zero electricity to confirm transactions. The model with proof of stake is you basically hold coins, and you can by staking coins or holding coins with your wallet open, that automatically that node starts to confirm transactions. So it doesn't require proof of work, although it may not be as secure necessarily as proof of work. Then there's also delegated proof of stake, where people are voting for delegates to confirm transactions. And there's a lot of different models, and some of them are not as resource or or it's intensive on the electricity front. So because it has been addressed, and it's a very valid concern. Obviously, we should try to minimize any environmental impact that it has, and I think we'll get to a point where we can find more scalable solutions. And let's just pretend that Bitcoin gets hijacked entirely, right? Well, then there's like thousands of other altcoins to choose from, right? So because of the nature of it being open source, like the three of us right now could just start our own coin, and like they can't stop it. It's like the 1,000-headed hydra. You cut off one head and 100 others will take its place, right? So if they were able to really centralize it or shut it down, they would have, trust me, because there's a lot of other alternative types of money that people tried to come out with that were more centralized, where a company is behind it. And not only do those get shut down, but the people get arrested, and all their assets get seized, and they get thrown in jail. So I'm still relatively optimistic with open blockchains and where we can go with this. And we do have problems, but Bitcoin's faced a lot of problems along the years, and it's survived many of these challenges as it's become more robust. So I do see solutions along the horizon. And although hashing is somewhat centralized with mining firms and stuff, many of these mining pools that have centralization is just a conglomerate of individual miners putting their hashing power together so that they can solve more blocks together, right? But one time, I think it was a few years ago, there was like ghash.io, which was this big mining pool, and they had actually reached over 51% of the mining network, and they weren't going to do anything nefarious with it. But as a result of that, alarm bells went off amongst the community, and immediately everyone pulled out of using ghash.io, that mining pool, and their hashing rate just dropped. And they used to be a dominant player, and now they're not anymore as far as a mining pool is concerned. So there still is some level of individual control as to if a mining pool becomes gets too much of that hashing power, that you could just pull out of it as well, right? So
Um,